welcome back to another episode. We got Kary Oberbrunner with us, so welcome to the show, man.
Tyler, it is great to be here. I love your show.
Thank you, man. So yeah, I think, for this episode, for everybody listening, we want to talk about like how we connected and what we're doing together. But to start, can you tell the audience just a little bit more about you and what you do?
Sure. So I started publishing way back in the day when Tyler was just a figment of his parents' imagination.
Really?
Now,
How long ago was it?
no, it was 2003. I got my first book contract. So you're pretty young.
Okay, yeah, I was 12 then.
That's
12, okay.
That's funny. So basically, I struggled as a kid with stuttering, and so I feel like writing kind of became my way of expressing myself. And I always wanted to get published, but I just thought, it was behind the curtain. Like, what's behind the curtain? How do you get published? How do you get an agent? So I started writing I submitted an article for a magazine, and to my surprise, they dug it, and I submitted another one. And then I found out they had a publishing company, and they basically said, yeah, you want to write a book, write a proposal. And I like no clue. And this was before the internet was big. So I just kind of hustled and worked my way to figure things out. Long story short, got my first contract, second contract, third, fourth, and I kept my day job. Let's just put it that way. I didn't know how to monetize. I didn't know how to basically go pro as a writer. And then my book, Your Secret Name, came out. And this is the new version. Yeah, there's an old version. This is my fourth book, believe it or not, my fourth book. And for some reason, like with that book, it told my story about depression and self-injury and all. It was like totally open book. And people really resonated with it. And I then figured out how to turn the book into multiple streams of income. Like, hey, I should speak on this book, and hey, I should create a course. And then people said, can we get certified on it? So it kind of happened by accident, but I started to turn a book into multiple streams of income. And then Tyler, that's pretty hot. Like, very few people know how to do that or do that. They just think, oh, your book's your business card. Well, what do you do with a business card? You usually throw it in the trash. Yeah. So right. So I always viewed books as businesses, not business cards. And then sure enough, people began to say, look, man, you got to teach us how to turn the book. And then I figured out 18 streams of income. And I'm telling you what, once that hit, people are like, wow. And so that's kind of my unique selling proposition in the marketplace is write a book and then turn it into 18 streams of income.
God, I love that, because people do say that a lot. Like, a book is a business card, but now that you're speaking that out loud, like, I'm realizing like that is exactly what I do with business cards is but I don't throw books in the trash. I definitely
no. In fact, it's almost like bad luck. If I know people, like, seriously, like even me, like when I'm clearing out the house or something, like I just can't throw a book away. And I think there's something ingrained us, like what do? You put a book on a shelf, you put it in a case, you treat books with this reverence, but business cards, you're like, psh, throw it away.
Exactly. Yeah. Now that you're saying it, I'm thinking about, I don't think I've really thrown a book out. I just like, and you were down here in Miami. I just have some still at my parents' house because it would, for an apartment, it would just flood the apartment.
Yes. Or you donate them, Goodwill. But it's kind of like bad luck or something to throw a book in the trash.
So I wanted to ask too, real quick, because I don't know, how many books do you have? How many have you written? Do you know?
So my next book comes out, Show Up, Filled Up. I think it's like 10 or 11.
Okay. Yeah. So you're like a real writer. This is awesome. Dude.
Yeah. We got the Unhackable book that came out in October, but yeah, Show Up, Filled Up comes out June 1, and maybe I don't know when this recording is going to hit, but it might be out by the time people listen to
Got
this.
it. So I think what would be a good kind of segue to where we are now is, so 2003 is when things started. And I actually, because I got into it in like 2010. So I don't know when self-publishing like
Yeah,
started, but I'm assuming it was between
probably
2000.
around.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So like, what were you, and you said you fell into it. It's funny. We have so many similarities because when I wrote my first book, I didn't do it to like help others with their book. I just fell into that.
Yes.
So you fall into it. And then what did you do like to grow your
Yeah.
publishing community? Like, what does that
Yeah.
look like start to till now?
So ironically, I got into traditional publishing, and a lot of people are like, ooh, you know, when you talk to indie authors, they think that's the holy grail. You're going to get an editor, you're going to get cover designer, you're going to get an advance, you're going to get all this stuff. And it sounds really sexy. It sounds really cool. Like here's one of my books came out, I don't even know, like 2009, and Zondervan is owned by HarperCollins now. So I mean, this thing was like legit in Barnes and Noble and all this. But what I realized is, okay, it says $15 as the author. I had to buy these copies for $7.50. And you might be like, well, that's slick. You got half off. Until you and I both know it probably costs $2.50 to print. So every time I'm buying my book from my publisher, I'm basically stuffing their pockets with $5.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the first thing people don't realize is like, okay, so you get a publisher. Not only do you give them your intellectual property for life, not only do you give your agent 15%, not only do you get a small advance, and it's ridiculous what they give first-time authors who don't have a big platform. I mean, our mutual friend David Hancock, he basically says it can be like $500 to $1,500 is average first-time author. Now, of course, Hillary Clinton gets millions, but we're just talking averages. So it's like you basically give away your content, you give away control. They chose the cover, they chose the title. You wish you had control, but then they're like, no, we're not going to do that cover. And then you want to put back ads for your programs, and they're like, no, we're not going to do that. So it's
Yeah.
like you give it all away and then you lose money. So in that sense, Tyler, oh, you'll like this. It wasn't until 2014. I don't know if you can see this, but this is the Warden. Yeah, we're gonna
Yeah.
go there together.
I know.
We're gonna go there together. So I wrote a book called Day Job to Dream Job, and it talks about how your day job is your Shawshank, and your dream job is your Zihuatanejo. And so the cool thing is that like I got super in with the movie stars, and they had the 20th reunion, and they allowed me to launch my book at the 20th reunion with the Warden. The LA Times picked it up, the New York Times picked it up. Like I get marketing, but here's the crazy thing. My publisher did nothing.
Yeah.
So in other words, what I realized is like, and this isn't, oh, I'm so good. This is most traditional publishers, you know it. They're just so bad at marketing. Like they don't get the cutting edge stuff. And I'm talking stereotype. I get it. There's some out there that are probably really good. But what I realized is like, why am I giving control to everything? And then I'm also doing all the work for marketing. And then I had this aha moment where it's like, I'm going to start my own publishing company. It was ridiculous. It was crazy. But that's what I did, because I had so many clients saying, teach us, show us, should we go with KDP? And I'm like, no, you actually shouldn't. So I kind of created my whole little unique model. I guess you'd call it a hybrid model, but it's kind of like the best of both worlds. It's the best of self-publishing, meaning profits, control, but then it's the best of traditional publishing where it's professional and distribution. And together those models converged into what we call Author Academy Elite. And that's been my publishing company since 2014.
2014, got it. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me that I could never see myself doing is like you spend all that time writing a book, but then you don't get the final say with a traditional publisher on
Yeah.
cover or even the content. From my understanding, I've never personally like published with a traditional publisher. Obviously, I have
Yes.
clients that have, but
Sure.
yeah, it seems to me like the end decision is there. So even at the end, if you're like, hey, I don't like the book cover, but they're like, hey, this is the cover,
That's
that's
right.
the cover. It's like, well, wait a second, this is 300 pages of my stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I can't imagine that conversation. That wouldn't go well.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And then sometimes authors sign contracts where they don't include audio. So then the publisher's like, well, we're not going to do an audio book until you reach this threshold. Then we'll invest the money. And you kind of say, I need the audio book to get to that threshold. So there's these weird conversations. And again, I'm not throwing all traditional publishers under the bus. I've worked with probably four different ones.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's some good ones out there, and there's some people who are cutting edge and innovative, but there's a lot that simply view themselves as, we print the book, you, the author, sell the book, and you market the book. And then, yeah, to your point, it's like, if you didn't have a say in how it looks, it's tough to market and sell it.
Exactly. So 2014 is when you start your publishing company. And now as we're recording this, it's 2021. So 7 years. Or I guess talk about like what the first couple of years were like, and then when did it really start to accelerate
Yeah.
and really grow?
The first couple of years were faith, man.
Mhm.
I would be on webinars, and I would blow up the models for people, like, hey, here's all the negatives, and let's create a third way. And they're like, I'm in. And then they'd say, how many have you published? And I'd be like, well, there's 20 in the works, but they haven't started yet, or they haven't published yet. So in the beginning, it was a lot of like, hey, do you trust me? And thankfully, I had a lot of clients that were people who took my courses, brought me in as a speaker, Deeper Path, different books. And they said, yeah, we trust you. So then I started my first event tied to the publishing company. And you've seen the big highlight reels now where we have 600 people and lights and cameras and LED walls and red carpets. And even the Oscars tried to sue us because we called it the Author Academy Awards. Like, now we have tons of success. But Tyler, I just want to tell people, if they're listening to this, in the beginning, listen, man, we had to put plants in the room just to fill up half the room. You know what I'm saying? Like, cool. And then the hotel said, and you can use this half of the room to eat, and you'll set it out and say that it got so full that you had to include tables to eat in. Like, man, in the beginning, it was crazy. But just like you, we believe in something called MVP, minimum viable product. You start it small, and then as you get capital, you start scaling it. And so I get letters today. I mean, just here's an example. This author is one of Gary V's premium speakers. She got married now, but it's Amy Schmidauer, 400,000 YouTube subscribers, one of the most sought after speakers today. She's got a huge, but here, I want to read you this quick card here. These are the things that light me up. Okay. When I get a card here that says something like, I forget, but it says something like, publishing with you was one of the most important moves of my career. So, I mean, this is the same woman that narrates Gary V's audiobooks. She's worked with Tony Robbins, and yet here she is saying, look, because of you, my career blew up. I mean, that's awesome. And then we get, like in the back of the book, you brought my book to life. So I kind of feel like the grandpa, I'm not the parent of the book. I didn't give birth to the book, but I'm the grandpa. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, 100%. And actually, as you were saying that, and we'll dive into this a little bit more in the interview, but with Infinite Partnership System, what we're doing together, as you're
Yes.
talking about 2014 when things started and you were trying things out, it just kind of hit me as we were talking, like the importance of doing what IPS does once you already have
Yes.
a base is obviously huge. But I think it's like it's just as important, I'll say, in the beginning, because it really removes the risk, right? So it's
Yeah.
like if
Oh, yes.
if I caught you
I
correct,
didn't have money to spend on ads in the beginning. Oh my gosh.
exactly. And so I'm curious how, because if I heard you correctly, you said that most of your clients were people that had taken your courses. So I
Yeah.
don't know how. I know you're a very good public speaker, so maybe you found those people through public speaking, or I'm not sure how those people
I'll
found
tell
you.
you what, it was just old fashioned relationships
Okay.
where they attended a conference, I attended a conference, and then maybe at lunch they were asking questions about things, and I call it show up filled up. In other words, serve. You don't sell, you serve, and that's why you and I connect so much. And
Mhm.
then I tell people that marketing is storytelling. So when I meet people, they say all the time, I can't do sales and marketing. And I'm like, can you serve and tell stories? And they're like, yeah. I say, great, you'll be good at sales and marketing.
100%.
So I'm at lunch sitting with these people and they're asking questions about, do I need an agent? How do you come up with the title? What do you put in your table of contents? And rather than selling people, I just said, man, let's take some time. Let me grab a pen. Let me grab paper. And I served them. And then at the end, they would be like, uh, dude, how can we hire you? What
Yeah.
kind of program do you have? And, that's why you and I connect so much, because the philosophy of Tyler Wagner, Authors Unite, the moment I met you, you were on a call with my client.
Yeah.
This is what's so crazy. And in the first minute, well, probably the first 5 minutes, I'm private messaging you on Slack. And I'm like, dude, we got to talk.
Yeah.
Because I could just tell even there that you weren't super salesy. You were here to help. You were low key. And I said, this is a guy that like brand match. And then of course we chatted. But man, when you told me about your system, about how you get referrals and leads, I was so lit up. Like I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
In fact, I pinged you. How soon did I ping you and say, we got to chat about this?
Yeah, it was bad. It was like early the next week. But I think
Yeah.
you had already like
Watch the whole thing.
yeah,
I
we were
watched the whole thing.
talking. But then after you watched it, you were like, all right, stop everything. We need to talk. And then
Yeah.
flights booked. And it was
Oh, listen, when when you're in so much pain and you've seen people be in so much pain, and the pain that we got to talk about today is ads.
Mhm.
Listen, I'm not against ads. You're not against ads, but we live in a pandemic world now where people are like done. They're done with all the cheesy stuff. They're done with all the, blah, blah, blah. And ads, let's face it, you put all your money on a platform and they're like, nope, we're not approving your ad. And
Mhm.
you say, well, let me talk to you. Nope, file an appeal. I mean, my company has built their brand around ads. And then certain ad platforms just said, you're done. And I felt that pain. And luckily, we could pivot and we're smart enough. And God's awesome to help us find solutions. But there's a lot of companies that would have turned in and folded. And then along comes you and I say, oh my gosh, you can build an entire 6, 7, 8-figure brand around no ads and no risk, but just simply taking action. And you're right. I said, I'm booking my flight to Miami and I'm bringing my whole team. And
Yeah.
And then we not only did it, and Josh, man, just that little notification you just heard was
Yeah.
just a sale. It was just a sale.
Yeah.
He just put it all caps, school, like it works, man. And so, yeah, let's talk about IPS.
For sure. And so I'd love to keep talking about that. And also what I realized too, because when people ask me, I try to remember what it was like in the beginning when I started Authors Unite. And it's hard to like think back exactly what it was like, because now with all of the testimonials, it's obviously easier for me now to sell things. And like you said, it's interesting. Like when I don't ever view myself as like good at sales, I
Yeah.
simply just get on the call and I just ask the potential client, I'm like, what are you trying to achieve? They tell me. And then if I believe that I can help them get there, then I will let them know what our service, like that's really all it is. And,
Yeah.
so, and look, I'm sure there's great sales.
But most people aren't like that, Tyler.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
most people, I'm telling you, most people got their script and they're like this. They're like, "Hi, Tyler, how are you today?"
I know.
You know what I'm saying?
And so in the beginning, I remember like trying scripts when I was younger because I didn't know, and I was just like, I'm gonna try. And like, it felt like I couldn't be the real me with a script.
Yeah.
So I just
Yeah.
completely, I think I gave that like a month or two. And then I was just like, I honestly don't know if this is working or not working. But like internally, and this is not to say, look, if you use a script, I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but
It wasn't you.
yeah, me and you are just more off the cuff type of people.
Yes.
But,
Yes.
but one of the biggest things that I realized is in the beginning, before you have testimonials, trust, like you had mentioned, is really one of the biggest things. So how do you get around that? Well, IPS is actually the solution to that, because you get around it by building these partnerships, and then you don't really need the testimonials because you already have like a trusted source referring you the person, which is pretty much the same thing almost. So
yeah, when I saw IPS, and for all the people who don't know, Infinite Partnership System and .com, but when I saw your model, I said, this is no wonder why it works, because everyone else is chasing the client, as in like you get them, I get them too on LinkedIn. They friend you, and then the next day, hey, can we grab a call and can I walk you through blah blah blah. Infinite partnership system, you don't go after the client, you actually serve someone who's in your industry, and by serving them, they're like, here's all my leads. and you have so many leads now. So it changes the whole game. And that's why I said I'm going to change my life. When I saw IPS, I literally did. I said, this is going to change everything, not only for us, but I said, this is going to change everything for every business out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting for me. I was actually talking with Colin recently about this, and like the concept of IPS, sometimes things are like so big that like you can't really fathom how big they are. And like that's what I feel like this is. Just to be completely real with the audience. I do believe it could change the way that businesses do business.
Oh yeah.
Like very dramatically, because the other thing about paid advertising, and again, it has worked for some people, we've all seen this, but what I don't like about it is you can't see the back end of what's actually happening, right? So it's kind of like, it kind of feels like the lottery a little bit, but with better odds, right? So it's like you put your targeting, but you still,
oh my gosh,
yeah, like
I have to walk people through my panic and anxiety. Okay. So I would literally say to a certain platform, I'm not going to name it, but a certain ad platform, in our heyday, I would say, here's $50,000. And this is true. Like we were running $50,000 a month on ads. And here's the crazy thing. I didn't know if people would show up. I didn't know if, and the ads would go to a webinar. Okay. So the ads would go to a webinar that they would sign up to hear me talk about why publishing is, why our model's better. And then after the talk, they would then apply. Then we would have to interview them to see if they were a brand match. Then they would have to get the buy link. Like, you look at all the tech and time, literally that was my entire business model. You see what I'm saying? That was my entire business model. But here's what didn't happen, Tal. One time I got strep throat. I already put 50K in the month. And now the webinar, and I couldn't speak. Okay. And then another time the internet went out. Like, that's 50K, dude, that's sitting there, and now your webinar's toast. These are the types of panic and anxiety that I would feel. And then along comes IPS, and I'm like, there's no upfront ads. This is ridiculous. This is unbelievable.
Yeah, and there's no panic, because the other things too, and I think you said with some ad platforms, or we know some people this has happened to, where your ads can get denied or whatever.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So you could put in,
absolutely.
And look, if your ad gets denied, like, they don't spend the money. But if you're thinking that, that 50K is going to turn into 100K, you still lost there. Even though you didn't lose your direct cash, that advertising never went out. And sometimes they'll take like days. I've heard of it taking like up to a week on some platforms, that before they decide to deny or not. And then once you start getting denied, it can just trickle. And if it shuts down and your whole business is set up on that, well, then then you got to figure things out and you're not
oh yeah. And then they started getting AI, artificial intelligence, to approve the ads, and certain keywords would flag it. So we would say, turn your book into a 6-figure business. And they're like, nope, you can't say that, And so then they would deny the ad, but they wouldn't tell you why. They would say you used a word you shouldn't have used. And you're like, well, what word? I can't tell you. I felt like I was giving my business away to other people to control it. With IPS, I decide how many calls I want to do. By the way, I do 0. My team does them all. Like, you see what I'm saying? Or I can cherry pick the ones that I really want. Like, you set your own, you've been doing it for years. You set your own pace, you pick your days off, you serve, there's no high pressure. And then leads just come in.
Yeah, it almost is a situation where I don't even view it as sales calls, because it's kind of like there's partnership calls and then there's get to know you calls. And that's really what I call it. That's all there is. And I think the big thing too is like, once people realize like what this like fully is and the capability of it, sometimes, you go from one side of like contraction, right? So it's like, okay, I only have so many options. What do I do? Like, I'm unsure. And then you go to the complete other side and there's so many options. And that's how I think me and you see marketing. It's limitless. And when it's limitless, it can be overwhelming. For instance, like, where do you want to grow your social media following? Well, there's 100 social medias. So it's kind of hard to decide. But with this, it's limitless, but it's targeted in its limitlessness. I think you obviously know what I mean. And that's what I love about it, is you truly can pick like one direct lane with this to build partnerships. And it would take you like a team of thousands to actually get to and I think maybe like to get to the limit of what you're capable of. It's just people haven't thought about it in this way before. So,
and not only that, the steps in IPS are so ridiculously simple that before you get on the get to know you call, this is a weird analogy, but hang with me. You heard me say it before. It's easier to kiss when someone's leaning in. Right? So in other words, a lot of ads are like, you're leaning into the person, and they're like, I don't even know you. When you do IPS, they're leaning in. They're like this has happened. Josh has been doing calls, and they say, oh yeah, we've seen you everywhere. Like, we've heard about you. We know what you do. We've seen your testimonials. We've seen, and then there's like zero, we call it
Hmm.
friction free selling. And they're leaning in already. And that's why you're saying there's no close, there's no sales call. So it is ridiculous. I think that it's going to be the way of the future, because now that we're in a pandemic or close to a post-pandemic, people are done. They're just like done with all the behind the curtain, all the salesy stuff. And they just want you to be authentic. And I think you've realized that IPS lets you be you, and it lets me be me.
100%. I think that is one of the things that the pandemic has kind of done is, I think for a lot of people, it put the importance of things in perspective, right? So now it kind of comes to like, if somebody sees a Facebook ad and then there's like a 2-hour webinar after that, I feel like that decision with time and just with everything that's happened, it's a way harder thing to get somebody to
Oh
do.
yeah.
So
Oh
it's,
yeah.
yeah, it's like, what are those leads
100%.
even worth at that point? So, and what's so interesting about this too is you can't even predict all of the positive like benefits, right? Because you're building all these partnerships. And like I've had occasions where I built a partnership with somebody like 2 years ago, and then I get a client from them, and then it just starts like going up and up, and then we end up doing a business together. And like, if you
Yes.
remember, we spoke. Um, I think I told you this story. There was one time where I literally had 6 different publishers, PR types of people that referred me the same person, right? So it's kind of like, do you think you're getting that sale? Like the only way you're not getting that sale is if you literally just like don't show up to the call, like
In other
multiple.
words, in other words, these 6 different people all said, you need to talk to Tyler because he offers
Yeah,
exactly what you need. And the person, again, you hear someone say it twice and you're like, okay, I should talk with that guy. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth. And then your product, Tyler, is one that's highly sought after. So now you basically say, it works, I'll guarantee it. But if you don't want it, 3 other people are going to be in line for it. And now they're suddenly here. You know what it does? It's Dan Sullivan's book. You become the buyer, not the seller.
yes.
See, everyone else out there is, oh, let me sell you. Let me sell you. What Tyler just did with IPS is he said, I become the buyer. And that's what you want. Nike is the buyer. Like
Mhm.
Nike basically has the pick of any athlete they want. And now they're like, okay, tell us why we should pick you, LeBron. You know what I'm saying? Like it switches the formula. And that's what Disney, same way. Disney can have any animator in the world. They're the buyer now. And that's what we want for the people watching this. We want them to be at such a spot where people are like, Kary, I gotta publish with your company. Like I saw what you did for Amy. Please work with me. And you're like, okay.
No, 100%. And that's one of the things I think is your brilliance is like you're able to take concepts and like really boil it down in that way. Like you're the buyer. Because for me, I think sometimes I feel like I do things, but I don't actually know what I'm doing all the time. And then when me and you connected, and
Yeah.
kind of like I knew the process I was doing, but I didn't fully see it at the macro. And
Yeah.
you were like, whoa, man, like hold up, look at what this is. And then
Right.
we came together and I was like,
Yeah.
whoa, every business can run on this,
Yeah.
no matter how small or big, it can start your business or it can like 10x your business, whatever the situation you're at is. Um,
Let's talk about that really quick, because I feel like it's like nutty to say that with IPS you can grow a 6, 7, or 8-figure business, and yet you and I have done it. We struggled in the beginning to go from 5 to 6, then we went from 6. What does each person want? What does the 5-figure person right now want and need? And then what does the 6-figure person want to go to 7? I know in the course we kind of like blow it up and break it down, but a 5-figure person just wants steady leads because it's
yeah.
randomized right now.
Yeah, I think steady leads and like they're still kind of refining potentially like what their product or service is fully, which
Mhm.
again, it's so funny. and this is honest, like I'm realizing it's like epiphanies are happening. What better way to refine a product than to talk to others in the industry, right? So it's
Ooh,
like,
that's good.
right. So think about it, it's like, even if you don't even have a business, let's say you're below 5 figures, just, and this is the first time we've talked about this, but but you have an idea of how you can help people,
Yeah.
schedule some calls with people in the industry and run the idea by them, right? And
Wow.
no ad spend, no risk, no
And
time wasted.
they'll tell you, they'll be like, well, if we had this, that would be really cool. And you're like, all
Yeah,
right, cool.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, 10 people said this, so it might be a good idea. So, but yeah, I think five trying to go to six is definitely like, I don't think they should be touching advertisements at that level. I just, because that's the risky money. And I think
Yeah,
there's no need to risk when you're at 5 figures.
totally. And then your 6 figures wanting to go to 7. What do you need? What are you looking for? That type of thing.
Yeah, so I think 6 going to 7, obviously 6 figures, and I'll speak for myself. 6 figures is when I found like my freedom, where I was just like, okay, I can do whatever I want, and like anything on top of this is like for impact, and it's just, it makes it more fun.
There you go.
So I think 6 to 7, you could dabble a little bit with the paid ads, but I wouldn't recommend it being your sole business at all. So I think from 6 to 7 is when you go into high gear and you're doing a lot of the calls. You don't have to. You could have salespeople, partner people doing them, but I think it would be good for you to just fully immerse yourself into the system, and because what you'll learn and the relationships you'll build that are forever. So I think consistency is really what they're looking for.
And then and I know we have some people now that are getting excited, that are ready to take the course and jump in, but there's 7 wanting to go to 8. What are they looking for?
Yeah, so it's what we discovered. It's funny, is it's like the opposite, almost the opposite of 6 to 7, right? So when I was at 6 going on to 7, my calendar, I think I've told you this, I don't know what it's not like a record, but I believe I've done over 50 calls in one day. Like I've
Oh my
actually done
gosh.
that where it was like 10-minute increments. And then I realized pretty quickly that that's a little too short. So I'm not recommending 10-minute increments. But in a week, I was doing 50 on average, let's say, in a week. So, that's what that was. And then what I realized is I was like, okay, I actually have like 20% of my partners are producing 80% of the revenue for my business, which
Wow.
is, really directly the 80-20 principle.
Yeah.
So I dialed back and I was like, let me focus on the people that I'm working the most with and what can we do to create more value together. And that's really where me and you came together. And it's
Yes.
kind of like you scale the system with a team, but you personally dial back and focus on your top partnerships to get to 8
Yeah.
figures.
Yes. Oh, 100%. And I love that because you don't need new leads. You just need to strengthen your current leads when you're at that point. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I knew you and I wanted to get on to talk about this. I mean, I'm usually interviewed by people, you're usually interviewed by people, but we kind of wanted to co-interview each other just because we know that this model is the answer, because there's so many people who are, I hear it like just last week, I heard a guy, I won't say the name of the platform, but he's like, I am so done with, blank. He said, I'm never going to invest a dime again. They treat me like crap. I've invested so much over the years and now they just blocked me with no reason. And I think people are just done. And the infinite partnership system is the answer, because you're not focused on the client, you're focused on partnerships, and that is the way of the future.
Mhm. I know, I agree. And I think, so for anybody listening, if you are interested in this, and obviously me and Kary believe in it wholeheartedly. And like Kary said, we're here to serve. And I just think you owe it to yourself to just like try this out,
Oh
because
yeah.
it's great. Like the way we word it, it's crazy to me. Like it really does to me sound too good to be true. Like no risk and get to 6, 7, 8 figures. But once you see what the system is and how it works, you'll be like, right away, I feel like it just clicks.
Oh,
You
it
just
clicked for me.
didn't think about it at a scalable level.
Yeah.
So either way, go to infinitepartnershipsystem.com. There's a free training there. And I highly recommend just checking it out and trying it out for your business and then watching the results. And me and Kary are here to support you along the way.
Absolutely.
So thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, thanks so much. And I can't wait to see all these businesses just start blowing up and reaching their ideal clients. I mean, we're going to start a revolution, and I'm so honored to be part of it.